Right, now, item 4, attainment of world supremacy within the next 5 years. Francis, you've been doing some work on this?
Yeah, thank you, Reg. Well, quite frankly, siblings, I think 5 years is optimistic, unless we can smash the Roman Empire within the next 12 months. 12 months? Yeah, 12 months. And let's face it, as empires go, this is the big one. So we got to get up off our asses and stop just talking about it.
Yeah. I agree. It's action that counts, not words, and we need action now.
Yeah, you're right. We could sit around here all day talking, passing resolutions, making clever speeches. It's not a shift. One Roman soldier.
So let's just stop gabbing on about it. It's completely pointless and it's getting us nowhere.
Right. I agree. This is a complete waste of time.
That was obviously Monty Python showing us how ridiculous it can get when you have a bunch of people trying to agree on one thing. And I showed that because I'm going to be looking at in this video specifically, the whole video is going to be about what's called the demiurge, because different ancient texts are identifying the same thing, but you might not always realize it's the same thing. So for instance, in the Gnostic texts, the demiurge is called Yaldabaoth, and it's lion-like. In the Hindu text of the Bhagavad Gita, for instance, Krishna identifies Brahman, and Brahman is the demiurge. All right, so if you only look at Gnostic texts, you might think that the demiurge is evil. If you only read the Bhagavad Gita, you'll think it's the most wonderful thing there is. So there's confusion. I see confusion online with people who think they know things just because they've read a few Gnostic texts. You have to spread your understanding and realize that everyone on earth is talking about the same thing. You know, and it makes things very clear in the end when you do that. So I wanted to go through three major things in this video to identify and help you understand the demiurge. Okay, because I've seen the demiurge. Maybe I should show you now what it looks like. It looks like this. Okay, so that's the creator, the demiurge. Demiurge means craftsman or artisan, suggestive of a creator, yeah, somebody who's crafting things. So this video will be about solar mythology to start with, because that's really important to identify the metaphor of the human psyche as the sun. And what it does and what it means, especially the equinox. Okay, and then we need to look at creation itself, how it works, what it is, because you understand it after you've had illumination. I became illuminated in December 2014, so it's what, 2 years and 4 months now. And as with the initial Monty Python sketch where nobody can agree, I'm going to look at different comparisons of different texts in different places, like Plato, Gnosticism, and the Bhagavad Gita, for instance, and the Christian identifications, because you may not believe it, but the person, Jesus Christ, is associated with Lucifer, and Lucifer is demiurge. Okay, so you need to get your head around what's really going on. Plato says the same kind of things as the Bhagavad Gita. The demiurge is all good. But Gnosticism and the idea of the fall of Lucifer is saying that the demiurge is no good. So you've got these two polarized views on one thing. And I've seen it and I've experienced it. So I can tell you a lot about it. You see it when you become liberated. When you become illuminated, you gain liberation from duality. Fundamentally, it's duality that you are liberated from, into singular understanding that all is one. Okay. So I'm going to end the video with by going through 30 I've recorded 30 plus names associated with the demiurge. So I thought I'd include that at the end of the video so you can see all the different identifications. You know, it's a lion, it's a lamb, it's a boat, it's a bright star. It's all these different things. There are so many things it's associated with. Okay, so yeah, we're gonna look at these things in this video properly. Okay, so here we go. Yes, the first thing I wanted to make sure that you find out about is that illumination is an event for you personally, and this event where you fly up basically what seems like outer space and turn around in a pitch black void to see the demiurge. That event is the most commemorated event in human history. It really is. This is a major issue on this planet. It used to be normal. It's been forgotten for some reason. Maybe people have taken it away from public view or whatever. But the information is still available. There's no excuse for saying that the truth isn't written down, even though some people might say that the truth is ineffable and therefore you cannot talk about it. See, so here I am making videos about the truth, and yet you can't talk about it. Let me explain what that really means. The truth being God, and God is your true self, is all there is. It's one thing only. The truth is one thing only. God is one thing only. The truth is God. God is the truth. One thing only is infinite. Therefore, you'll never get to the end of it. You can know God, meet God, and have a relationship with God, but it doesn't mean you'll get to the end of God. So the idea that God is ineffable and the truth is ineffable and you can't talk about it and God has no name, this is true. God has no name because there was no one before him to give him a name. God is the Aeon of Aeons, the Aeon-giving Aeon, the one true existence, the true reality. I sound like Krishna now. But this is true. This is what I experienced. So God is infinite and immeasurable. Therefore, you'll never get to the end because God is never ending. So it's ineffable. But it doesn't mean you can't know God. Do you see that distinction? God is like a person as well. God is not physical. There's no physicality. So you can't use anything physical to prod and find God. The only way to find God is personally, consciously yourself. And the way you do that is you focus on stillness. So you bring your mind to a state of stillness and you can become aware of God. Okay, that's the standard method of meeting God. And from that everything will happen. It should do. A lot of people don't meet God when they come to that stillness. I think it's because they're not ready for what's to come. Because I think that, I mean, that's just my opinion really. The third eye opening is what comes as a result of meeting God. And that is a serious event. It's a major event. It changes everything. Because you see what's called the demiurge and the creator. That is the creator. So we'll look at we need to look at creation to get our heads around that. And it's quite weird. It is a bit weird because you need to deal with timelessness and time at the same time. You need to get your head around the concept of timelessness being eternal and constant. So this is the nature of God, what we call God. Everything physical is transient. We also need to go into the concept of unifying Shiva and Shakti. Shiva is otherwise known as Purusha in the Bhagavad Gita, and Shakti is Prakriti. So they have other names, but I'm going to say Shiva and Shakti. Shiva is consciousness, Shakti is energy. Energy leads to matter. So Shakti is everything physical, everything that has movement. Shiva is consciousness, which is associated with stillness, so they are opposites. When you unify them, you're unifying dual opposites, such that there is nothing left to compare. And you find the one thing, and that one thing we're going to find. Okay, I'm going to explain that. So the sun in the sky has always been associated in the ancient past with the human psyche. As the sun rises, so you're born into life. As it reaches a peak, so do you. And as it goes to set, so you die. So the path of the sun during the course of the day, as it arcs across the sky, with the horizon there as a line, as a level, that represents your life. In your life, you're supposed to become illuminated. So when you become illuminated, the light shines from inside the center of your brain where your pineal gland is. And that light is the demiurge. This may sound very strange. I'll explain shortly why it's the demiurge. Okay, so I'm not just making this up. So as the demiurge has an association with a lion because it looks like a cloud that has a similar sort of shape to the head of a lion, and it has beams of light coming out of it that are considered to be its lion's mane, or the equivalent of the mane of a lion. That's why the sun is associated then with a lion, because that demiurge is born in your psyche. So before you are crowned, you're just a psyche moving towards unification. And when you find unification, the demiurge is born in your psyche. So you are associated with the sun just as much as the demiurge can be associated with the sun. And I think this has caused confusion in people. It's a way of talking about your process, pre-demiurge, post-demiurge, as a psyche. There's a symbol for when you become illuminated, you're referred to as a serpent of wisdom, and the reason is your nervous system is now complete. The light completes you, and of course it's the demiurge that looks like the head of a lion. So the serpent of wisdom has the head of a lion. Notice on the left is the moon, on the right is the sun. When the sun and the moon come together in eclipse, that's symbolism for illumination, the moment of illumination, because it's said that the moon turns blood red. And that association, it has to do with the further association with the demiurge to a lamb. So it's associated with the lion. But if you associate it with a lamb, because it looks like the body of a lamb, it can be interpreted that way because it's covered in white bundles of what looks like hair. So it has a shape of the lion's head, but its body reminds us of a lamb. And because light is bleeding out of the cloud or the lamb's body, it's said the lamb is slain, and the symbolic color associated with it is then red. Okay, so the lion is red. Therefore, at Giza in Egypt, the Sphinx, being a red lion, because it was painted red, represents the demiurge. See, it has a headdress, the Nemes headdress, that literally represents demiurge as the flesh of the gods. See the association with gold and the sun as your psyche that has now become filled with the demiurge. So the Pharaoh's death mask, the gold with the gold beams, is to associate with the sun as a psyche that has now seen the birth of the demiurge, and that the whole headdress is the demiurge in representation, because the beams are thin and straight, just as you see them on the Nemes headdress, and they go out vertically, horizontally, just as they do on the demiurge, or from the demiurge's body. The three stations of the sun during the course of that arc is an Egyptian hieroglyph for bread. And of course, illumination occurs in the house of bread, which is the human head. House of bread in Hebrew is Bethlehem, where the Son of God is born. The demiurge is the Son of God. Okay? Son of God is not a person. It's the demiurge. That's what it is. The arc of the sun in the sky with the horizon forms the Egyptian hieroglyph for bread, pertaining to completion of the psyche, which is when the light is born. That completes you. The tree of life is said to be complete. Okay, and you are liberated away from everything physical and the demiurge, so that you can see the demiurge, because you are now separated from his influence. The demiurge is Lucifer also. Not only the Son of God, but Lucifer. And therefore, Lucifer is the ruler of the world, because the demiurge is the creator. So Lucifer is the creator, or the Son of God is the creator. All the names of the demiurge are just aspects, are just ways of referring to the creator. Some of them are going to surprise you later on, I think. The demiurge then is the Star of Bethlehem, even though that relates to Sirius, okay, literally in the sky, because Sirius with Orion also represent the moment when you see the demiurge, such that you become like Sirius in the night sky, because you fly up into what seems like outer space. And Sirius in the near distance is looking, as it were, towards Orion. Orion represents the cloud. The beams of light coming out of the cloud are in rows of 3. And they have the same configuration as the 3 belt stars of Orion. So Orion is chosen to represent the cloud. At equinox, at Giza as well, with the 2 major pyramids, when the sun rises between them, that's a symbolic metaphor as well for illumination, because the 2 pyramids are basically equal in size. They're almost equal. But equinox, it does this at equinox. The sun rises in that position when you stand at a certain place and watch. And equinox is equal day, equal night. Just as you have 2 equal brain lobes that have equalized when you come to peace before your third eye opens and you contemplate and unify Shiva and Shakti to find that all is one and are liberated. So the equalized brain in perfect balance, imagine a thin pin with a great big brain on top, perfectly balanced, the impossible is being performed here. This is the true miracle of life. It is the true miracle. It's the only miracle that's referred to in the New Testament. Throughout, all the miracles Jesus performs are metaphors of this event. Raising Lazarus from the dead is a metaphor for illumination. The marriage at Cana is a metaphor for illumination, where water turns to wine because white and red are the colours of the divine child or the demiurge. So at equinox, the sun rises between 2 equal brain lobes. That's another reference to illumination, where the brain is equalized and perfectly balanced. So in creation, the Most High God is the only truth there is. Pistis Sophia, or the great goddess, is thought of as the infinite space as an infinite womb in which fundamental oscillations occur, which you could call energy, because energy is motion. And it's a chaotic ocean. It's chaotic because it's undefined, and it's undefined because their extent is infinite, because the space they're in is infinite. So the waters in that space are also infinite in extent, and therefore undefined. Chaotic. It's just a descriptive word for that which is undefined and unknown yet. So it's a very simplistic, energetic basis, like a sea of potential. And from it, all kind of physical things spring up. You know, we have galaxies full of stars and planets and creatures. Yeah. The system there that seems to be extant is that a galaxy creates solar systems, which create planets. When they're in the Goldilocks zone, when they're in a good distance from their parent star, a planet might generate life, like the Earth, and it will generate creatures from its ocean. Land creatures come from the ocean originally. So human beings have ultimately evolved from fish and creatures from the sea. All land creatures come from the sea. The culmination of all of creation occurs with a human being that has rationale and the ability, while in creation, to merge everything in understanding, and that seems to generate the third eye event, the unification of dual opposites known as Shiva and Shakti. I didn't know about that when I did it. I was simply contemplating duality to find out about it, because I was prompted to do that. You can find out about that in a book I wrote. It's actually, there's a link underneath this video to the book I wrote as a result of illumination. It's a free download, by the way, so you can read that whenever you want. 10 months after I became illuminated, I had an event where something was shown to me in my mind's eye directly, completely unexpectedly, and I'll show you what it is. This is what it was. So I hope you had enough time to read it, 'cause there are two major sentences written down concerning diamonds and pyramids, and the universe is a field of clay scattered with diamonds, and pyramids are diamonds in a field of clay, and then clay makes bricks which make pyramids which are capped to become diamonds. That's the 5-level process. You can apply that to everything in creation. From galaxy to star, planet, creature and brain, as if there's a progression in creation. So creation has a purpose. It's generating something. It's generating the demiurge, which generates creation, because the demiurge is timeless. Its mother is timeless. The infinite space is timeless because there's no dimension, so there's no time to infinity. It's nature. It's only when you have the cosmic ocean, the chaotic ocean, that has a finite quality to it, even though it's infinite in extent. And its finiteness becomes refined. It creates duality. Yeah, you always have two opposite particles created, if you can call them particles, that make atoms, molecules, that make the vegetable kingdom, the animal kingdom. The human is the pinnacle of the animal kingdom, and the pinnacle of the human is the demiurge. But when you gain the demiurge in your physical body, you are liberated from the physical world and your body. So you've completed a cycle, a physical cycle that is like a loop in time, because the demiurge is timeless. It always exists anyway. So you acquire it, even though it's already there in the underworld. It automatically exists by itself in the underworld, which is the pitch black infinite space itself. Okay. Between the chaotic ocean and the demiurge, the formation of the demiurge, you have clay, bricks, pyramid, capstone, diamond as the energetic cosmic ocean itself, the ocean of chaos. That would be the clay. Bricks refers to atoms from material that's created by that clay. The pyramid is made of minerals, and atoms, of course, get together to make molecules, which are basically the mineral kingdom. Then you have the vegetable kingdom, the animal kingdom, the pinnacle of which is a human. See, so this is the process in creation. It's the progression in creation that leads to the production of the demiurge, which already existed to create that system in the first place. It's very strange what goes on in creation. It always links back to timelessness and this loop through time. See, loop through time is a progression that takes you to the origin again, to the alpha and the omega. The demiurge is the omega of the alpha, which is the clay of the great goddess. Energy is clay, with which God, according to the Bhagavad Gita and Plato, that's the energy which God has to use to make the most perfect thing, which is the demiurge. So there's a real conflict of understanding between Gnosticism and Plato's writings and the Bhagavad Gita. See, because the Gita says it's the great thing. It's a creation of God in the first place, so it must be good. But because in Plato's version, because God only had a chaotic ocean as a material to use, the divine child or the demiurge is the best that can be done with that material. You see, so there is a limitation to it. Okay. Notice that High God with Divine Mother and Child, if you make a triangle of that Trinity, between Mother and Child is a development, is the progression of creation or the development. As it goes towards the mineral kingdom, it becomes restricted. A mineral is like fixed. It can't move about. It has no intelligence as such. It's only when you get to the vegetable kingdom that you start having motion and that which goes against entropy. Entropy is degradation with time. See, overall, and a plant grows against entropy. It's not decaying, it's growing and developing. In fact, the process of a human being can be associated with the process of a plant, just as the tree of life can be associated with a plant that starts with a seed, that when you plant it in the ground it grows a stem that grows leaves, which are two-dimensional surfaces. The stem is like a one-dimensional extension, two-dimensional surface, and then a three-dimensional volume develops, which is a bud, and it differentiates itself within and turns into lots and lots of petals, and then it inverts itself, inside out. It turns itself inside out, and there is a release of pollen. That whole process can be likened to the human condition, the human body that grows and develops, and then you are liberated from it as if you are pollen, liberated from an open flower. Yeah, when your third eye opens, it's like a flower opening, releasing you in liberation. Okay, and this event, this liberation thing, is referred to as salvation. the concept of being taken up. That idea. Christians in the last, I don't know, 200-300 years, this concept of rapture has been going around Christianity, and they think that God will just rapture them like that because they're Christians. Unfortunately, they don't realize that it actually refers to third eye illumination. And of course they associate that with the devil. So now that I've hit that subject, very quickly, the concept of the devil, Satan, or Lucifer in terms of being bad, let's use a childish term and dub it bad, that comes from the simple fact that the truth itself, being set in stone as the physical world or manifestation, is severe. See, being physical, if you jump off a cliff, you die. Nothing's going to stop that. Yeah, so the truth in manifestation is severe. So the manifest world is considered to be severe, as the devil is severe. So the devil concept is simply a personification of the severity of the truth. The truth is divine. It's not evil, it's divine. So severity and divinity go hand in hand. Obviously people are confused. If Lucifer is the demiurge, and that exists in the underworld, what's all this about the fall of Lucifer? Well, surely it's the creation or production of God, of the divine child, the demiurge, in the underworld, which is under true heaven, under God, as it were. It is a dual condition. The demiurge and the space, infinite space that surrounds it, is a duality. God is singularity, which is infinite. So God is above the demiurge, see? But the demiurge in the Gnostic text thinks he's all high and mighty. It's very interesting to read that. The demiurge has flesh. Its flesh is the foundational chaotic energy that produces all matter. But in that raw state, God has come in and fashioned it into the perfection of what it can be, the most perfect thing that it can be. So a diamond has been created from clay, and the process that led to that is creation. So this is I find this subject absolutely mind-bogglingly fascinating. I can't stop thinking about it at the moment. All these different identifications of that demiurge. Yeah, so the demiurge and Sophia with God, that trinity, is timeless. It's always the way it is, and it's applicable throughout the entire universe. It's not just for people on Earth or in this galaxy. It's everywhere the same. This is the truth itself. The breakdown of what there is, as it were. The ultimate truth you must experience yourself to know. Yeah, I can tell you about the infinite nature of God and the kind, gentle, loving nature of God, but you won't know that until you meet yourself. Okay. So now we've gone through a little bit of creation. You've seen the nature of creation there with the Trinity and the progression through creation. You could draw that as a diamond as well. You know, you can represent that whole system as a diamond, which is interesting. I wanted to look at the Nag Hammadi, a paragraph from the Nag Hammadi scroll called "On the Origins of the World," because I've read this out before, but I wanted to focus on this one passage at this moment, because it's actually telling us the same thing that I've just told you. So, in the first few paragraphs of that text, I'm going to find out it's the fourth paragraph. Okay, if you want to have a read and look at it yourself, it's the fourth paragraph down. On the origins of the world, it's talking about Pistis Sophia and Yaldabaoth, the divine son, or the demiurge. So in this paragraph it says, now the eternal realm, aeon, of truth has no shadow outside it, for the limitless light is everywhere within it. That's high God. That's the nature of high God. There's limitlessness. It's one thing only. It's pure light. Everything is there all at once. Nothing is missing. See? But its exterior is shadow. That's a reference to the infinite space, what we call infinite space, which is pitch black. So its exterior is shadow, which has been called by the name darkness. That's infinite pitch black space. From it there appeared a force presiding over the darkness. I would associate that force with magnetism, or dielectricity if you want to call it that, but I would associate it with magnetism. The forces that came into being subsequent to them called the shadow the limitless chaos. So they're saying that the limitless chaos is like the infinite ocean in infinite space. From it, the infinite ocean in space, from it every kind of divinity sprouted up. So that's material stuff. Together with the entire place, so there's galaxies everywhere, so that also shadow is posterior to the first product. Imagine that infinite ocean has been withdrawn into a perfection of the ocean, and it's now the demiurge in the infinite space. So you've arrived at the result of the chaotic ocean. See, the perfection of the ocean is the demiurge. Okay. So from the ocean, every kind of divinity sprouted up, together with the entire place, so that also shadow is posterior to the first product. It's the result. The result is the demiurge, who is the waters brought into a perfection. So he is also referred to as shadow, even though he's a bright white light that looks like a cloud with beams. He's referred to as a shadow in this because he's come from Pistis Sophia, who is the shadowy energy, the fundamental energy that makes everything. It was in the abyss. The abyss is another word for the underworld or infinite space, a bottomless ocean. Yeah. It was in the abyss that it, shadow, appeared. That's the demiurge, appears as a light, deriving from the aforementioned Pistis. So this Nag Hammadi scroll is specifically telling you exactly what I've just told you in different terms, that clay makes bricks which make ultimately the diamond. Yeah, so here you have the same thing. It's posterior, it's the last product, it's the result of Pistis. It's her perfection, her divine sun. And it's a sun because it's born in you from the body phallus concept, as if your nervous system is like a phallus that you use to in commemoration in Egypt, you would become Osiris, making love to Isis, which effectively makes you the phallus of Geb, the earth, who is now making love with Nut, the sky. Okay, exactly the same concept throughout the ancient world. That this phallus concept is a reference to your body as a phallus for liberation, because you are liberated from the body as if you are being ejaculated from the body phallus. See, it's likened to the sexual act. Yeah, so in this scroll on the origins of the world, it goes on to say, when Pistis Sophia desired to cause the thing that had no spirit, that's the demiurge, because it's a thing, to be formed into a likeness and to rule over matter and over all her forces, there appeared for the first time a ruler out of the waters. The demiurge is the ruler, or the king of the physical manifestation. He's the creator of the manifestation. Yeah, there appeared for the first time a ruler out of the waters, lion-like in appearance, because it looks like the head of a lion. Androgynous, sexless, of course. It's not male or female because it's one thing only, with flesh. Having great authority within him and ignorant of whence he had come into being. Now when Pistis Sophia saw him moving about in the depth of the waters, she said to him, "Child passed through here," whose equivalent is Yaldabaoth. So Yaldabaoth means child passed through here. Also in the scroll called On the Origins of the World, we have the Trinity identified directly. And it says, "I want you to know that first man is called begetter, self-perfected mind." That in Hinduism would be Atman, the Atman, the one true being. He reflected with great Sophia, that's Divine Mother, his consort, and revealed his first begotten androgynous son, that's the Demiurge. So, his male name is designated First Begetter, Son of God. His female name, First Begettress Sophia, Mother of the Universe. So there's directly identified the Trinity that I've already identified. Yaldabaoth, or the Demiurge in the Gnostic text there, has two more names associated with it, and they are Samael and Saklas. Samael literally means blind god, or god of the blind in Aramaic. Yaldabaoth is considered blind or ignorant of its own origins. Its name is also found in Judaica as the angel of death and in Christian demonology. This leads to the further appellation of Satan. Saklas is Aramaic for fool. In the Gnostic text, the Demiurge is being like slapped in the face and sort of told off for being so stupid, because he thinks he's the God, the only true God, because all he knows is that he is the one in the underworld by himself. It's interesting in the Nag Hammadi text that later on it says that he realized there was one greater than him, and he asked for a sign to prove that there was one greater than him, and this light came into the underworld from God, and he realized then that there was a true God above him. And therefore he's referred to as a fool. That's why you have an association with him as a fool. But when you read the Gita, or I'm going to show you, I'm going to read through the description given by Plato concerning the Demiurge, and he comes across as completely different. It's really interesting to see how different these things are. So when I looked up Demiurge on Wikipedia, I found a reference to Plato, and it says that Plato, as the speaker, Timaeus, refers to the Demiurge frequently in the Socratic dialogue Timaeus from 360 BC. The main character refers to the Demiurge as the entity who fashioned and shaped the material world. Timaeus describes the Demiurge as unreservedly benevolent, and hence desirous of a world as good as possible. The world remains imperfect, however, because the Demiurge created the world out of a chaotic, indeterminate non-being. That's the infinite waters of Nun, the chaotic ocean. The first and highest aspect of God is described by Plato as the One, the source, or the monad. This is the God above the Demiurge and manifests through the work of the Demiurge. The monad emanated the Demiurge, or nous, consciousness, from its indeterminate vitality due to the monad being so abundant that it overflowed back onto itself, causing self-reflection. That's the loop. This self-reflection of the indeterminate vitality was referred to by Plotinus as the Demiurge, or creator. The second principle is organization in its reflection of the non-sentient force of dynamis, also called the one or the monad. The dyad is energia, emanated by the one, that is then the work, process or activity called nous, demiurge, mind, consciousness that organizes the indeterminate vitality into the experience called the material world, universe, cosmos. Plotinus also elucidates the equation of matter with nothing or non-being in his Enneads, which more correctly is to express the concept of idealism, or that there is not anything or anywhere outside of the mind or nous. Yeah, so according to Plato, the demiurge is a fantastic thing. It's the creator of the world. It allows for illumination. So what can be bad about it? But in the Gnostic text, Yaldabaoth is like slapped about and told off, as it were, by Pistis Sophia for being such an idiot or a fool, Saklas. You know, that's very different, isn't it? So now that you've heard Plato, Plato's concept of the demiurge, basically, and the Nag Hammadi concept, or the Gnostic concept, where there's something wrong with the Yaldabaoth or the demiurge, I want to point out a book by a man called Jose M. Heru Aragon. The book is called The Forbidden Religion. And he says there's a great conspiracy in the world. I mean, it's almost like David Icke, but this guy has made a terrible mistake, and I'm going to show you what his mistake is. The demiurge is otherwise known amongst its many names. One of its names is Satan. Of course, the word Satan comes from the word Saturn, and you can go into all the etymology of that if you want. But I'm more interested in the idea of the demiurge being referred to as Satan and Lucifer. It's the bringer of light. It is the light itself. So, in this book by Jose, his second chapter is called Matter is Evil. The third chapter is called Time is Evil. You're starting to get the impression that this man is going to be labelling all sorts of things as just pure evil. So he's got completely the wrong end of the stick, and he's misunderstood the concept of the severity of the truth. The truth is severe simply because it can't be changed. It can't be anything other than the truth. That's all. It's very simple. It doesn't mean it's evil. You know, there's truly nothing evil. The true evil is associated with human beings having a split psyche, not being unified. That's what is thought of as evil, truly, by those who are illuminated. This guy then goes on to... there are quite a few chapters in this book, and they're very short, all the chapters. The 10th chapter title is Satan the Oppressor. The Oppressor. Satan is the severity of the truth, so it feels oppressive to those who don't understand the truth. The next chapter is called Lucifer the Liberator. So, I've read this book recently, and it turns out he's made a big mistake. He doesn't realize that Lucifer is the same as Satan. It is. It's the same thing. They're both the demiurge. It's just a different way of referring to it. He goes on to talk about the serpent of salvation. So in a way he doesn't recognize the truth, but in another way he does. He's got good handles on some of it, but bad handles on other parts of it. And his misidentification has led to really poor conclusions. So instead of being a happy person, Jose sounds like a very unhappy person to me, reading his book. He spends most of his time pointing the finger. This is evil. That it's like that scene from the Mummy, 2, the second Mummy film, where that guy goes, "This is cursed. That is cursed. Everything is cursed. Apparently, everything's evil. This is stupidity. It's just stupidity. It's just childishness." When all is one, when you know that all is one, what is this evil nonsense? It's nonsense. Of course, people behave in an evil way, but as I said, it's human beings that associate themselves with evil in their actions, if they're too physical. That actually brings me to a point I wanted to raise concerning what is identified by Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, because he talks about what's called sattva, rajas, and tamas. And these are three aspects of being. In alchemy, the mentality or mindfulness is associated with the sun. The sun is a representation of your psyche. So yellow is a color associated with the psyche. Blue is associated with the physical body, or physicalness, and red is associated with emotion. Sattva is mindfulness, rajas is the emotions, the passion, and tamas is the physical nature. So depending on where your mind is, you will gain the result of your endeavors. So if you endeavor physically, you would only get physical results and end up rebirthing all the time, reincarnating. You won't rise higher. You'll actually sink lower if you only consider physical things to be of value, because they're transient, so they have no value. It's a temporary value. If you know that, there's no problem. But if you don't, if you grasp at things and emotionally invest in things, you're going to have problems. Those who exist more in sattva, more mindful, they think more, they understand more, so they become more compassionate and they rise higher. See, they move towards the goal, not away from it. So I associate these three aspects of being with the three colors in alchemy associated with being of the physical person. The yellow, the red and the blue that I've highlighted before in the video on alchemy. Okay, I associate those. They are the three gunas, as they're called in the Bhagavad Gita. Aspects of being that can either lead you to liberation or confuse you and leave you ignorant and impotent in a way, lost and confused. So, going back to this book, Hosea has written, everything's evil apparently, and the only thing that's great is the high God. Well, fine, he gets some things right, but some things wrong. Okay. So I want to highlight now the Bhagavad Gita, because Krishna talks about Brahman quite a bit, and Brahman is the demiurge. All right. So before I read anything, have a look at this depiction of Vishnu with a lotus plant growing from his navel, at the top of which, the flower of which is called Brahman. That is the demiurge. So take a look and compare it with the Egyptian god Osiris in the sanctuary, with the same lotus plant growing with the four sons of Horus. Brahman has four faces, and you have four sons of Horus in the Egyptian, so they are the same. Those four sons of Horus on the top of the flower, that's Brahman. Now look at a South American metal etching that shows what could be interpreted as a UFO with stairs coming down, but there's a man lying on his back underneath at the bottom of the etching. That man you can compare to Vishnu or Osiris, and from his navel or his womb grows the lotus plant that becomes Brahman, but they seem to have represented it as a mushroom. People can interpret it as a UFO, but it's Brahman. It is the demiurge. That what looks like a UFO is a demiurge. Now take a look and compare it with an oriental version of the Demiurge that also looks like and can be interpreted as a UFO, with what we would call Divine Mother standing looking at the Demiurge. So even in the Orient, this is well known, or was well known. Yeah, and that what you might think, oh, that's a UFO. No, no, that's the Demiurge. It's the cloud of light. It's the pineal light. It's the Creator who has flesh, which is pure energy. Yeah, but it still has flesh. The true God has no physicality or flesh or anything like that. It's pure eternal spirit. Immortal eternal spirit, God. So in this 15th century Renaissance painting by Domenico Ghirlandaio, Divine Mother, or the Great Goddess, is shown as looking at her child in exactly the same concept of you just seen in the Oriental picture with what looks like a UFO and a fully grown woman. It's the same thing. This is Pistis Sophia looking at Yaldabaoth in this painting. On the right hand side, you have a little man standing with a dog next to him, and it looks like he's doing this, looking up into the sky. In fact, he's pointing to his head. To tell you that the thing in the sky he's looking at is in the head, and the thing in the sky is a representation of the sun and a black boat. They both represent different ways of interpreting the Demiurge or the pineal light. So it's a black boat because the pineal light or Demiurge could be thought of as a boat with oars sticking out of it, sailing in the ocean of chaos. As it were, or in the underworld. So boats are associated with this. The sun, of course, as I've said before, is not only associated with your psyche, but the appearance of the Demiurge in your psyche, so it also can represent the Demiurge. And that's what you see. The man with the little dog is the same as the tarot card of the Fool with the little dog at his feet. That little dog and the man is also a reference to Sirius, the dog star, or the dog constellation that has the major star in it, the star Sirius. In the near vicinity you have Orion, so Sirius and Orion is the little dog and the man. The reason the little dog and the man are shown there is because if you look at the tarot card again, you'll see behind the Fool in the sky is the sun risen to a high point. So the Fool card is the first card and the last card, so it's the Alpha and the Omega, like Pistis Sophia and Yaldabaoth, or the Demiurge. It's telling you the Trinity is complete. You completed the loop in time, and you found timelessness again, because you become timeless when you see the Demiurge yourself. So you become an eternal being. So yeah, in the Fool card, you're seeing a Fool, and at the end of his journey, he's a master. So he's illuminated, and in illumination, the sun is risen to its highest point, and you can see the Fool is looking into the sky. So it's as if he's looking at the cloud, now that he's liberated and illuminated. So you have the beginning and the end, both represented at the same time in that Fool card. And there they are again in the 15th century painting on the shoreline with an ocean, the ocean of chaos. The top of the mountain The waters rises in you and leaves God's boat at the top of the mountain, and then the water recedes back to calm. So the boat is left in the air in the painting because it's at the top of the mountain, but the mountain was formed by the water that have now receded, and they are the waters of chaos, because it's the waters of chaos that makes the divine child. And it's thought of as a flood up your nervous system. It is the great flood of ancient myth. This concept, this liberation, is the great flood. As I mentioned, Krishna talks about Brahman in the Bhagavad Gita, and I'm going to quote a paragraph from chapter 8, the Eternal Godhead, in which Krishna says, "My highest nature, the imperishable Brahman," that's a demiurge, gives every creature its existence and lives in every creature as the Adhyatma, and that means spirituality. My action is creation and the bringing forth of creatures. The Adibhuta is the perishable body, the Adideva is the Purusha, eternal spirit. Purusha is another way of referring to Shiva, which is consciousness. And consciousness is associated with spirit. Spirit is the fundamental, which has consciousness. The Adiyadna, which is the supreme sacrifice, is made to me as the Lord within you. So he's telling you that when you sacrifice in you, that's the pineal gland, you sacrifice. The lamb is slain. You slay your lamb. You sacrifice your lamb to God. See? How do you do that? Well, you unify Shiva and Shakti. I've explained in the video on the Great Pyramid and the Tree of Life, if you want to go and see that, because I explain about duality in that video and how you unify them using time and timelessness. So in the same sense that Brahman, or the demiurge, is the result of all of creation, and yet he exists timelessly, so he's there before creation. He is a priori to creation, as well as there at the end of it. So he's the Alpha and the Omega, in a sense. In the same way, you have a situation between consciousness and energy, where consciousness comes from a timeless state. Energy is transient within a timeless setting. Energy creates matter, and that exists in eternal space, which is timeless because there's no dimension to eternal space. It's dimensionless. So it's zero-dimensional, which is the same as singularity. Timelessness is the foundation of all things, and it creates this thing called time. And in time is a creation where consciousness can manifest and link back to timelessness by realizing that even though timelessness is creating the stuff in time, the stuff in time is generating a recording which becomes a timeless reality. So it's as if God is all things recorded, so there's a future nature to God as well as an eternal infinite nature to God that is ever present. God being your true self. When I met God, it was as if I was meeting my own self from the infinite future. So this is the whole thing. Everything is a loop. You come away from your true self, which is all there is, in order to know your true self, to have companionship, which I think I mentioned before. Otherwise there's just aloneness, because there's one thing only. See, so the purpose of life is to come into relationship with your true self, which is God. I think quite a few religions say that. And it's true. This is the point. I have a relationship with God, but it's very internal, and God is very personal. I didn't know that it was like that until I met God. And it's like meeting a person and becoming your best friend. That's exactly what it's like. But it obviously, it's far greater than anything you expected, because God is infinite and eternal and has no need for physicality. Absolutely amazing. There's no weight on his shoulders. See, when you meet and merge with God, you lose all your body weight, you lose all your, not your cares, but your worries. you still care. I still cared about the world and, you know, people in the world. Anyway. So, yeah, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is telling us that the Brahman, being imperishable, basically timeless and eternal, is the highest nature of everything that is not, everything that is manifest. It's the highest of all manifestation. Yeah, and in terms of meeting God, Krishna says, I am easily attained by the person who always remembers me and is attached to nothing else. Such a person is a true yogi. Great souls make their lives perfect and discover me. They are freed from mortality and the suffering of this separate existence. Every creature in the universe is subject to rebirth, except the one who is united with me. So liberation comes from meeting God and uniting with God, such that you've already died. You don't have to die ever again. So when I physically die, I don't have to reincarnate on this planet. This is salvation. Check this out. By serving me with steadfast love, this is God talking, the high God, a man or woman goes beyond the gunas, the aspects of being. Such a one is fit for union with Brahman. For I am the support of Brahman, the eternal, the unchanging, the deathless, the everlasting Dharma, the source of all joy. I would have to agree with that. One more thing that Krishna says in the chapter called the Supreme Self, about God really. In this world there are two orders of being, the perishable, separate creature, and the changeless spirit. That's like Shiva and Shakti. Yeah, Shakti is stuff. Yeah, Shiva is the eternal spirit, as it were, or consciousness of the eternal spirit, because Shiva and Vishnu are aspects of Krishna. Krishna is said to be the Most High God. Okay, in Christianity you'd say God Most High. So, the perishable separate creature and the changeless spirit, but beyond these there is another, the Supreme Self, the Eternal Lord, who enters into the entire cosmos and supports it from within. Talking about creation, Krishna says, my womb is Prakriti, which is Shakti. In that I placed seed. Thus all created things are born. Everything born comes from the womb of Prakriti, and I am the seed-giving father. That's really interesting because a monad is you'd say, if you were talking about it in terms of physics, you'd say singularity. And a singularity is like a seed. If that seed is in the infinite ocean is like soil in which you place the seed so that a tree grows. You know, and there's the idea of the growth of a galaxy, which is like a tree that's been squashed into a disk, and fruit grows on a tree, such that, you know, solar systems develop planets, creatures, and brains. This system in creation, it seems to be universal. Here's something that Krishna says concerning your true self, the fact that God is your true self. Those who know me as their own divine self break through the belief that they are the body and are not reborn as separate creatures. Such a one is united with me, delivered from selfish attachment, fear and anger, filled with me, surrendering themselves to me, purified in the fire of my being. I was purified in an internal flame of fire that was cold and it was blue when I thought about it. And I actually felt, funnily enough, while that was going on, while I was walking around in Angkor Wat, I was in bliss, and this is what entering heaven is about, and gaining the first key to heaven, because you fall in love, you know, which is of the heart. So this is where you meet God in the heart, in the center of your being, And then when you open your third eye, of course, it's like God is risen in you, like the sun is risen. And when it rises to its highest point, it's eclipsed by the moon, which turns blood red, and the lamb is slain. So the third eye opens, and you are liberated and saved from the physical demiurge and his machinations, which are severe. You see, so you can take that as being a divine issue in the demiurge is the like the focused truth, as it were, when you find that he's at the top of Mount Olympus. See, he's at the top of the mountain, he's the boat at the top of the mountain. And of course on Mount Olympus you have Zeus. Zeus, I would associate with the demiurge. I'd say he is the demiurge and not the high god. And in the name Jesus, you have Jesus. There's an association with Zeus, with Jesus, and of course the personification known as Jesus Christ is also the demiurge. So yeah, there are very different expressions concerning the demiurge, you know. So if you go online and you listen to Christian thinkers or Gnostic thinkers, I'd be very careful about their opinions, because if they are not illuminated, they do not have the insight of the truth, and they're not truly discerning. You know, there's a tendency for them to become emotionally attached to their opinions because they've done research and they think they've put the right information together with exactly the right connotation, when that may not necessarily be the case. Until you have personal direct contact with that truth, you aren't going to have that insight. Okay, it's a sort of horrible truth, but it is true. You must get there yourself to know for yourself. Our God, brilliantly, the night.